The massive space station floated in the void between stars, its metal halls buzzing with worried voices. Representatives from dozens of alien species had gathered for an emergency meeting. Something terrible was happening in the outer regions of the galaxy, and nobody knew what to do about it. Ambassador Kethmar stood at the center of the great hall. His crystal-like body flickered with patterns of blue and red light, showing his deep concern. The tall alien had traveled far to bring this warning to the Galactic Council, and his news was not good. 17 fleets have gone to the Sol system, Kethmar announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. None came back. Not one ship. Not even a message saying they were in trouble. The council chamber filled with the sounds of alarm. Some aliens clicked their mandibles in worry. Others hummed low notes of fear. A few species flashed bright colors across their skin to show their distress. Elder Voxhai slowly rose from her seat. She was ancient even by the standards of her long-lived people. Her wrinkled skin told the story of countless years, and her eyes had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore. When she spoke, everyone listened. "The humans are not what they seem," she said in her creaky old voice. "We have made a terrible mistake about them." She waved her gnarled hand, and holographic images appeared in the air above the council. The images showed a blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. Small metal objects moved around the planet, clearly primitive spacecraft using simple chemical rockets. "Look at their technology," Voxhai continued. "They still burn chemicals to reach space. They split atoms to make energy. They have not even learned to travel faster than light. By all measures, they should be harmless." The images changed to show more human technology. Nuclear weapons that could destroy cities. Basic computers that filled entire rooms. Simple robots that could barely walk without falling over. "Yet," the old alien said, her voice growing darker, "our most advanced warships simply disappear when they go near their world. Ships with weapons that can crack planets. Ships with shields that have never failed in battle. Ships that have conquered star systems." A younger council member, his green scales shimmering with confusion, spoke up. "Perhaps there are natural dangers in that system. Gravity wells we don't understand? Some kind of space storm?" Voxhai shook her head slowly. 43 different species have sent their best ships to investigate the humans. Military vessels, science ships, even automated probes that need no crew. All gone without a trace. The chamber fell silent. Every being present understood what this meant. In all their history of space travel, nothing like this had ever happened. Entire fleets did not simply vanish. "I propose," Voxhai said, "that we declare the Sol system forbidden. No ship should go there until we understand what is happening." But before the vote could be taken, another voice spoke from the back of the chamber. It was deep and harsh, carrying the authority of military command. "The eternal hegemony does not run from primitives." Fleet Commander Zarthek strode forward, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber floor. He stood twice as tall as most species, his gray skin marked with the scars of 100 battles. Golden medals covered his chest, each one representing a world his empire had conquered. "These humans," he said with contempt, "are barely more advanced than animals. They have not even left their own star system. Their weapons could not scratch the hull of our smallest scout ship." Kethmar's crystal body flashed bright red. "Fleet Commander, 17 fleets have—" "17 fleets of lesser species," Zarthek interrupted. "The hegemony has never lost a battle to inferiors. Our ships are built from metals harder than diamonds. Our weapons can turn planets to ash. Our shields have stopped the fury of dying stars." Elder Voxhai tried to speak reason. "Pride has destroyed more civilizations than any weapon, young warrior. Perhaps it would be wise to—" "Wisdom?" Zarthek laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "The galaxy respects strength, not wisdom. If the hegemony shows fear of primitives, every species will think we are weak. Our empire would crumble." He activated his own holographic display, showing the vast hegemony fleet. Thousands of ships filled the projection, each one the size of a small city. Their dark hulls bristled with weapons that could destroy entire fleets of lesser vessels. "One battle group," Zarthek declared. 150 ships. I will take them to this Earth and show the galaxy what happens when primitives dare to threaten their betters." The council erupted in protests. Dozens of voices spoke at once, warning the fleet commander not to go. But Zarthek had already made up his mind. "The hegemony has conquered 3 galactic arms," he said over the noise. "We have destroyed species more advanced than these humans. We will not be stopped by chemical rockets and nuclear toys." Ambassador Kethamar stepped forward, his crystal body now pulsing with urgent patterns. Fleet Commander, please listen. Something destroyed those ships. Something powerful enough to make our best technology disappear without a trace. Whatever guards that world, it is not primitive. Zarthek looked down at the smaller alien with disdain. Fear makes cowards of you all. The hegemony knows only victory. Elder Voxhai made one last attempt. In my long life, I have seen many species choose pride over caution. None of them survived their choice. But her words fell on deaf ears. Fleet Commander Zarthek was already walking toward the exit, his heavy footsteps echoing through the chamber. Behind him trailed his subordinate officers, their faces showing doubt but their loyalty keeping them silent. As the hegemony delegation left, the council chamber filled with worried murmurs. The vote was quickly taken, and the Sol system was declared off-limits by unanimous decision. But everyone knew the vote meant nothing if the hegemony chose to ignore it. Kethamar slumped in his seat, his crystal body now dim with despair. They will not listen, he said to Elder Voxhai. Their pride blinds them to danger. The ancient alien nodded sadly. Pride is a luxury few species can afford. The hegemony has been powerful for so long, they have forgotten that strength alone is not enough. Through the great windows of the space station, they could see hegemony ships already preparing to leave. The massive vessels moved with purpose, their crews eager to prove their superiority over the mysterious humans. Should we warn Earth? Asked a council member. Voxhai shook her head. If the humans are truly primitive, our warning would only create panic. If they are something else... She paused, her old eyes reflecting starlight. Then they already know what is coming. As the council session ended, representatives from across the galaxy departed with heavy hearts. They had done what they could, but some lessons could only be learned through bitter experience. In the depths of space, the hegemony fleet began its journey toward the Sol system. Fleet Commander Zarthek stood on his command bridge, confident in his power and certain of victory. He had no way of knowing that he was about to encounter something that would change his understanding of the universe forever. The warning had been given. The choice had been made. Now all that remained was to see whether pride or caution would prove the wiser path. The hegemony homeworld was a sight that struck fear into the hearts of enemies across the galaxy. It was not a planet at all, but a massive ring of metal and crystal that circled a captured star. The ring was so large that entire fleets could dock in its ports, and millions of beings lived and worked within its spinning structure. Deep inside the ring, beneath layers of armor thicker than mountains, lay the War Council chambers. This was where the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy made decisions that shaped the fate of entire species. Fleet Commander Zarthek stood before a curved wall covered in holographic displays. Each display showed a different part of the hegemony's vast empire. Red dots marked conquered worlds. Blue lines showed shipping routes that carried wealth back to the homeworld. Green zones indicated species that paid tribute rather than faced destruction. Look upon our empire, Zarthek said to the assembled officers. 3 spiral arms of the galaxy bow before our might. Thousands of species serve us. Millions of worlds provide for our needs. The officers nodded in agreement. They were the best the hegemony had to offer. Veterans of countless campaigns, each one personally chosen for their loyalty and skill. Their uniforms displayed medals earned in battles across the stars. Yet the Galactic Council dares to suggest we should fear primitives. Zarthek continued, his voice growing angry. They want us to avoid a species that has never left its own star system. They ask the greatest military force in the galaxy to show fear. Admiral Vextor, scarred from fighting in the Rigel campaigns, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He was old enough to remember when the hegemony was smaller, when they had to be careful about which battles they chose to fight. Fleet Commander, Vextor said carefully, perhaps the Council's concerns have merit. 17 fleets is no small loss. Maybe we should send scouts first, gather more information. Zarthek's eyes flashed with anger. Scouts, information? Are you suggesting the 3rd Battle Group is not capable of handling primitives who still use chemical rockets? The other officers tensed. Questioning the fleet commander's judgment was dangerous, even for someone of Vextor's rank and experience. I suggest only caution, Vextor replied. The disappeared fleets included some of our allies' most advanced ships. Perhaps nothing. Zarthek slammed his fist on the control panel, making the holographic displays flicker. The hegemony does not show caution to inferiors. We show overwhelming force. We demonstrate why our empire spans the galaxy while others cower in fear. He activated a new display, showing detailed information about the third battle group. 150 ships arranged in perfect formation. Battleships the size of cities, their hulls black as space and twice as hard as any natural metal. Cruisers that could outrun any enemy, while delivering devastating firepower. Destroyers built for speed and stealth, capable of striking before enemies knew they were there. Each ship in this battle group, Zarthek explained, carries enough firepower to destroy a civilization. Their shields can withstand the fury of supernovas. Their weapons have never met armor they could not pierce. The hologram zoomed in to show individual vessels. The flagship Eternal Dominion dominated the center, its massive hull bristling with weapons ports. Around it, smaller ships formed protective formations that had been perfected over centuries of warfare. The humans have what? Zarthek asked mockingly. Nuclear weapons that can destroy cities? How quaint. Our point defense systems could stop every nuclear weapon on their planet without effort. Chemical rockets? Our fighters move faster than their fastest missiles. Captain Hrendak, youngest of the assembled officers, spoke up hesitantly. Sir, the energy readings from some of the disappeared ships suggested they encountered something unexpected. Their last transmissions mentioned unknown technology. Zarthek turned his cold gaze on the young captain. Unknown technology from a species that has not mastered faster-than-light travel? Use your brain, Captain. Those ships probably encountered some natural phenomenon. A gravity well, a magnetic storm, perhaps the humans' own incompetence with antimatter experiments. The fleet commander began pacing, his heavy boots echoing in the chamber. Consider the possibilities, gentlemen. A species barely out of their primitive stage, playing with forces they do not understand. They probably destroyed those ships by accident, through some poorly contained experiment or uncontrolled fusion reaction. The officers exchanged glances. The explanation made sense. Primitive species often destroyed themselves and others through misuse of advanced technology they did not fully comprehend. But even if they did destroy those ships intentionally, Zarthek continued, what could they possibly do to us? Their most powerful weapons are toys compared to our least advanced systems. He activated another display, showing comparative technology levels. Hegemony energy weapons that could slice through moons. Human weapons that could barely damage city blocks. Hegemony ships that could travel between stars in days. Human ships that took months to reach their own neighboring planets. The difference is so vast, Zarthek said, that calling it a contest would be insulting to the concept of war itself. Admiral Vextor made one more attempt. Fleet Commander, wisdom sometimes suggests that when many strong forces fail, the problem may be greater than it appears. The chamber fell silent. Several officers nodded slightly, agreeing with the Admiral's words. But Zarthek's expression grew dangerous. Admiral Vextor, he said in a voice like ice, are you questioning my judgment? Are you suggesting that the third battle group, pride of the hegemony fleet, might fail where others have fallen? Vextor straightened in his chair. He had served the hegemony for most of his life, had conquered worlds in their name, had never retreated from any battle. But he also understood that sometimes survival required swallowing pride. I question nothing, Fleet Commander, he said finally. I serve at your command. Zarthek smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Good. Because this mission is about more than defeating primitives. It is about showing the galaxy that the hegemony fears nothing and no one. When we broadcast our victory over these humans, every species will remember why they serve us. He gestured to the star map, showing the route to Earth. We will enter their system with full force. No stealth, no subtlety. Let them see our ships in despair. Let them understand the futility of resistance before we demonstrate our power. The planning session continued for hours. Officers discussed attack formations, weapon deployments, and conquest protocols. The plan was simple and overwhelming. Arrive in force, demand surrender, and destroy any resistance completely. As the meeting ended, officers filed out to prepare their ships and crews. Soon the third battle group would depart, carrying with it the full might and arrogance of the hegemony empire. Admiral Vextor lingered in the chamber after the others left. He stared at the holographic display showing Earth, a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. What are you hiding? He whispered to the image. But the planet offered no answers, and soon he too left to prepare for a journey that would change everything. In the depths of space, the third battle group assembled. Crews loaded weapons and checked systems. Officers reviewed battle plans and conquest procedures. Engineers ensured every ship was operating at peak efficiency. Fleet Commander Zarthek stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, watching his fleet prepare for departure. Pride filled his chest as he looked upon the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Soon they would show the humans and everyone else why the hegemony ruled the stars. Space around the edge of the Sol system suddenly filled with the massive forms of hegemony warships. 150 vessels materialized from faster-than-light travel, their dark hulls reflecting the distant light of Earth's sun. The third battle group had arrived, and their sensors immediately began scanning for threats. Fleet Commander Zarthek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Through the massive viewing ports, he could see his fleet arranging itself in battle formation. Each ship moved with precise military efficiency, weapon systems coming online and shields activating to full power. "Report," Zarthek commanded, his voice echoing across the bridge. Sensor Chief Kilnara, her blue-scaled fingers dancing across holographic controls, began reading from her displays. "Sir, initial scans of the system show exactly what our intelligence predicted. The third planet from the star shows signs of primitive civilization. The main display activated, showing a detailed view of Earth. The blue and green world hung in space like a jewel, white clouds swirling across its surface. Small metal objects moved in orbit around the planet, clearly artificial satellites of basic design. Energy signatures are consistent with primitive technology," Kilnara continued. "Electromagnetic communications, nuclear power generation, chemical propulsion systems. No signs of advanced weapons or defensive systems." Zarthek smiled with satisfaction. The planet looked exactly as harmless as their intelligence reports had suggested. No orbital defense platforms bristling with weapons. No energy shields protecting the world from attack. No signs of the advanced technology that should be necessary to threaten hegemony ships. "What about the asteroid belt?" asked Tactical Officer Hrendak. "Could there be hidden bases among the rocks?" Kilnara adjusted her sensors to scan deeper into the system. "Some mining activity detected, sir, but very primitive. Simple collection of metals and ice. No military installations, no hidden weapons platforms." The fleet commander studied the readouts with growing confidence. Whatever had happened to the previous fleets, it could not have been caused by human military action. These primitives barely had the technology to reach their own moon, let alone threaten starships. "Deploy sensor drones," Zarthek ordered. "I want detailed scans of every planet, every moon, every significant asteroid. If there are natural hazards in this system, we will find them." Small robotic scouts launched from the fleet, spreading out across the solar system like metal insects. Their advanced sensors began mapping every object larger than a house, searching for anything that might explain the mysterious disappearances. As the fleet moved deeper into the system, they observed human activity through their long-range instruments. Primitive spacecraft traveled between Earth and its moon, carrying supplies and personnel. Mining ships worked in the asteroid belt using simple tools to extract raw materials. Communication satellites relayed radio signals between different parts of the planet. Everything appeared exactly as primitive as their initial intelligence had suggested. The humans seemed completely unaware that one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces was approaching their world. "Sir," reported Navigation Officer Krental, "we are receiving radio transmissions from the planet. Multiple frequencies, various languages. They appear to be normal civilian communications." Zarthek listened to a sample of the transmissions. Music, news broadcasts, personal conversations between humans on the planet's surface. Nothing that suggested military preparation or awareness of the approaching fleet. "They don't even know we're here," he said with amusement. "Their sensors are so primitive they cannot detect our ships at this distance." The sensor drones continued their work, mapping the system in detail. They found ice on the outer planets, volcanic activity on some moons, and asteroid fields rich in metals. But nothing that could explain how previous fleets had been destroyed. "Perhaps," suggested Admiral Vextor, who had remained quiet during the approach, "the other ships encountered some kind of experimental weapon, something the humans tested and then dismantled." Zarthek considered this possibility. "Show me their technology again." The display changed to show detailed scans of human spacecraft and installations. Simple chemical rockets that burned fuel to create thrust. nuclear reactors that generated power through controlled atomic reactions, metal structures built using basic industrial techniques. If they had weapons capable of destroying our ships, Zarthek reasoned, we would see evidence of the technology required to build them: advanced materials, exotic energy sources, manufacturing capabilities far beyond what we observe. The analysis made sense to everyone on the bridge. The humans showed no signs of possessing technology advanced enough to threaten even a single hegemony scout ship, let alone entire fleets. As they passed the orbit of Mars, strange readings began appearing on some of the sensors, brief energy signatures that didn't match any known technology, gravitational fluctuations that seemed to shift and move without apparent cause. "Sir," Kilnara reported with confusion in her voice, "I'm detecting some anomalous readings. Energy patterns that don't correspond to anything in our databases." Zarthek studied the new data. The readings were faint and intermittent, appearing and disappearing seemingly at random. They didn't seem to originate from any specific location or object. Natural phenomena, he decided. Perhaps solar wind interacting with the planet's magnetic field in unusual ways. Or radiation from the asteroid belt creating sensor echoes. But even as he spoke, more strange readings appeared. Brief electromagnetic pulses that almost sounded like structured communication. Gravitational waves that seemed to follow patterns rather than random fluctuations. "Could be interference from their primitive communications," suggested Hrendak. "Their radio signals might be creating unexpected harmonics with our sensor arrays." The explanation seemed reasonable, but some of the bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances. The readings were unlike anything they had encountered in decades of space travel. As the fleet continued its approach toward Earth, the anomalous readings became more frequent. Sensors detected brief flashes of energy that appeared and vanished too quickly to analyze. Gravitational instruments registered distortions that seemed to move through space like invisible ships. "Sir," Kilnara said hesitantly, "some of these readings almost seem intentional, like they're following patterns." Zarthek's confidence remained unshaken. "Sensor ghosts," he declared. "Advanced equipment sometimes creates false readings in systems with unusual magnetic fields. Focus on real targets." But deep in the sensor data, hidden among the streams of information, something else was happening. Brief electromagnetic pulses were appearing in sequence, almost like a code being transmitted. Gravitational anomalies moved in formation, as if guided by intelligence rather than physics. And strangest of all, embedded in the background radiation of space itself, sensitive instruments detected something that sounded remarkably like laughter. The third battle group continued its approach toward Earth, confident in their power and certain of victory. Behind them, the outer system seemed peaceful and empty. Ahead of them lay a blue world that appeared defenseless and primitive. But in the space between, reality itself seemed to be watching them with invisible eyes and preparing surprises that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the universe. Fleet Commander Zarthek stood on his bridge, master of the most powerful military force in the galaxy, approaching what seemed like the easiest conquest of his career. He had no way of knowing that he was about to discover the difference between what appears to be true and what actually is true. The trap was not a place or a weapon. The trap was assumption itself. The Eternal Dominion crossed into Earth's orbital space with the full third battle group spread out behind it, like a metal storm. 150 of the galaxy's most powerful warships moved in perfect formation, their weapons charged and shields at maximum strength. Fleet Commander Zarthek stood proudly on his command bridge, watching the primitive blue world grow larger on the main display. This moment would be remembered throughout the galaxy. The day the hegemony proved that no species, no matter how mysteriously dangerous they might seem, could stand against overwhelming superior force. "Sir," reported Sensor Chief Kilnara, "the humans are responding to our arrival. Their primitive satellites have detected us, and we're receiving multiple radio transmissions. The communications filled with human voices speaking in dozens of different languages." The universal translators quickly decoded the messages, revealing a mix of fear, confusion, and surprisingly, what sounded like coordination. "They're organizing some kind of response," Tactical Officer Hrendak observed. "Multiple launch sites across the planet are showing activity." Zarthek laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the bridge. "Let them respond. Show me what these primitives consider a military force." The display zoomed in on Earth's surface where rocket launches were indeed taking place. Dozens of human spacecraft were rising from the planet, their chemical exhausts bright against the darkness of space. The ships were small and crude-looking, clearly built using the same primitive technology they had observed throughout the system. "Threat assessment?" Zarthek asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Minimal to non-existent," Rendak replied. "Their largest vessels appear to be cargo ships. Even if they were armed with their most powerful nuclear weapons, they couldn't penetrate our point defense systems." The human ships continued to rise from Earth, forming up in what appeared to be some kind of defensive formation. There were perhaps 50 of them, tiny compared to even the smallest hegemony destroyer. "Open communications," Zarthek commanded. "Let us introduce these primitives to their new masters before we demonstrate what happens to those who resist the hegemony." But as the communication array activated, something impossible began to happen. The human spacecraft, which had appeared to be simple chemical rockets just moments before, began to change. Their crude chemical exhausts suddenly shifted to something else entirely. Energy signatures that the hegemony sensors couldn't identify began emanating from their engines. The ships themselves seemed to be reconfiguring, their hulls flowing like liquid metal into new shapes. "Sir?" Kilnara's voice carried a note of disbelief. "The energy readings from those ships are impossible. They're showing power outputs that exceed our own capital ships." Zarthek stared at the display in confusion. The primitive rockets were transforming before his eyes into vessels that looked like nothing in any hegemony database. Sleek, curved hulls that seemed to bend light around themselves. Weapons systems that pulsed with energies that made the ship's computers struggle to calculate their potential power. "Sensor malfunction," he declared, though uncertainty crept into his voice. "Run full diagnostics on all systems." But the sensors were working perfectly. The human ships had somehow transformed from primitive craft into technology that appeared to be centuries ahead of anything the hegemony possessed. On the main display, a communication request appeared. The image that formed showed a human female standing in what looked like a command center. She had dark hair and calm eyes, and when she spoke, her words were in perfect hegemony standard. "Greetings, Fleet Commander Zarthek of the Eternal Hegemony 3rd Battle Group," the human said with a slight smile. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Network. We've been expecting you." The bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at the display in shock. Not only was this primitive speaking their language perfectly, she knew Zarthek's name and the designation of his fleet. "Impossible," Zarthek roared. "Your species lacks faster-than-light communication. How do you know our language? Our designations? Our approach vectors?" Admiral Chen's smile never wavered, but something in her eyes suggested vast depths of knowledge. "Oh, we learned your language from the crews of the previous fleets. Before we sent them home, of course. Most of them anyway." The words hit the bridge crew like physical blows. The missing fleets hadn't been destroyed by accident or natural phenomena. They had been captured, their crews taken prisoner and interrogated. "Your empire values strength above all else, doesn't it?" Chen continued, consulting something off-screen. "Pride over wisdom? Force over diplomacy? It's a common pattern among younger civilizations." Zarthek's rage built like a stellar furnace. "You dare call us younger? The hegemony has ruled the galaxy for thousands of years." "Thousands of years," Chen repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, that's quite young for a galactic civilization. We were traveling between stars when your species was still learning to use fire." As she spoke, more ships began appearing around the human formation, not launching from Earth but materializing from what had seemed like empty space. Each vessel was larger than anything in the hegemony fleet. Their design so advanced that sensors couldn't properly analyze their construction. "You see, Fleet Commander," Chen explained, "Earth has been a testing ground for quite some time. We are not the primitive species you believe us to be. We are the descendants of those who chose to remain hidden while the galaxy tears itself apart with endless wars." Space around Earth was filling with vessels that dwarfed even the mighty Eternal Dominion. Stations materialized from apparent nothingness, their hulls incorporating materials that bent light and seemed to exist in more dimensions than normal space should allow. "The primitive technology you observed," Chen continued, "is what we allow visitors to see. A carefully maintained illusion designed to test the character of species who find us." The planet below shimmered and revealed itself to be protected by energy shields that made hegemony defenses look like soap bubbles. The simple satellites they had detected were transforming into weapons platforms that could have served as battleships in any other fleet. Every civilization that enters our system receives the same test, Admiral Chen said. We observe how they approach the unknown. Do they come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship? Do they send scientists and diplomats? Or do they come with weapons and demands for surrender? Zarthek's mind reeled as he tried to process what he was seeing. The most powerful military force in the galaxy was suddenly surrounded by technology that made their own ships look like primitive toys. Your approach to our system tells us everything we need to know about your civilization, Chen continued. You came not to explore or communicate, but to conquer. You brought your largest ships and your most destructive weapons because you believed strength was all you needed. Around the hegemony fleet, space itself seemed to be shifting. Reality bent in ways that made veteran officers question their understanding of physics. Gravitational fields that shouldn't exist began affecting their navigation systems. Energy patterns that violated known laws of science played across their hulls. This is impossible, Admiral Vextor whispered from his station. No species could hide technology this advanced. We would have detected something. Admiral Chen seemed to hear him despite the impossibility of such a thing. You detected exactly what we wanted you to detect, Admiral. We've been watching your empire for centuries, learning your capabilities, understanding your limitations. Ships that had seemed kilometers away suddenly appeared within the fleet formation. Weapons systems that fired automatically shut down without explanation. Life support continued functioning, but navigation and faster-than-light drives simply stopped responding to commands. How? Zarthek demanded, his voice breaking with the strain of accepting the impossible. How is less important than why, Chen replied. We could have revealed ourselves at any time. We could have announced our presence and shared our technology with species ready to use it wisely. The human admiral paused, studying Zarthek through the communication link. But wisdom cannot be given, Fleet Commander. It must be earned through experience. And your species, like so many others, chose the path of conquest over the path of growth. The mighty third battle group hung helpless in space, surrounded by forces they could not comprehend or combat. Every system they depended on for survival was functioning, but every system they needed for war or escape had been quietly disabled. Admiral Chen's expression remained pleasant, but her next words carried the weight of absolute certainty. The choice before you now is simple, Fleet Commander. Return to your empire with a message of peace, or remain here until you learn to value wisdom over pride. The space around Earth had become something beyond the understanding of galactic science. Massive structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once surrounded the helpless hegemony fleet. Ships larger than moons moved through space as easily as birds through air, their hulls made from materials that bent light and seemed to laugh at the laws of physics. Fleet Commander Zarthek stood frozen on his bridge, staring at displays that showed readings his mind refused to accept. Every instrument on the Eternal Dominion was functioning perfectly, yet they all reported the impossible. Energy levels that should have torn space apart. Gravitational fields that moved like living things. Weapons that could apparently reshape reality itself. Admiral Sarah Chen's image remained steady on the communication screen, her calm expression unchanged by the demonstration of power that surrounded her words. Behind her, the command center that had appeared primitive now revealed itself to be beyond anything the hegemony had ever imagined. Every species that discovers Earth faces the same choice, Chen said, her voice carrying across the silent bridge. We have been testing galactic civilizations for longer than most stars have existed. Those who come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship, find teachers and allies. Those who come with conquest in their hearts find something else entirely. Zarthek finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. What are your terms? Simple, Chen replied. Return to your empire. Tell them what you have seen here. Explain that Earth offers sanctuary to any species that chooses cooperation over domination. Share the knowledge that there are alternatives to endless war. She gestured to something outside the view of her communication device, and new images appeared on the hegemony displays. Dozens of species, many that Zarthek recognized as supposedly extinct civilizations, working together in massive space stations. Technologies beyond imagination being shared freely between different kinds of beings. Those who abandoned the path of conquest, Chen explained, found purposes greater than empire. They learned that strength shared is multiplied, while strength hoarded eventually becomes weakness. And if we refuse your terms? Zarthek asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Chen's smile remained gentle, but something in her eyes suggested depths of power that could reshape galaxies. Then you join our educational programs. Most species eventually learn to appreciate different perspectives on civilization, though admittedly, it usually takes a few generations. Around the hegemony fleet, space continued to demonstrate that the rules of reality were more suggestions than laws. Ships that should have been light years away appeared next to the Eternal Dominion. Crew members reported that their personal weapons had somehow transformed into flowers. Navigation computers insisted they were simultaneously in 17 different star systems. Admiral Vextor stepped forward, his scarred face showing the weight of a lifetime spent in military service. Admiral Chen, may I ask how long your people have possessed this technology? That's an interesting question, Chen replied thoughtfully. We didn't develop this technology, Admiral. We inherited it from those who came before us, who inherited it from those before them. Earth has been a refuge for peaceful species and a test for warlike ones for millions of years. She activated another display, showing the galaxy from a perspective none of the hegemony officers had ever seen. Civilizations rose and fell like waves on a shore. Empires expanded and collapsed. Wars raged and ended. Through it all, a network of hidden worlds provided sanctuary for those who chose wisdom over conquest. Your hegemony is not the first empire to believe itself invincible, Chen continued. We have records of hundreds of such civilizations. Some learned humility and joined the greater community. Others, she paused meaningfully, others became object lessons for species that came after them. Sensor Chief Kilnara looked up from her instruments with confusion written across her scaled features. Sir, our faster-than-light drives are offline but not damaged. They simply won't engage. It's as if space itself is refusing to let us leave. Space is more cooperative when travelers have peaceful intentions, Chen observed. Your drives will function again when you're ready to use them for the right purposes. Zarthek felt the foundations of his worldview crumbling around him. The hegemony had built its entire identity on the belief that military might was the ultimate arbiter of galactic affairs. Yet here was a force so advanced that it treated their most powerful weapons like children's toys. What do you want from us? He asked, his voice heavy with defeat. We want you to make a choice, Chen replied. You can return to your empire with a message of hope. Tell them that the galaxy contains wonders beyond their imagination, available to those who abandon the path of endless war. Or, she didn't need to finish the sentence. The implications hung in the space between worlds like a promise and a threat combined. Tactical Officer Hrendak spoke up hesitantly. Admiral Chen, the species we conquered, some of them deserved what happened to them. They were aggressive, dangerous to peaceful civilizations. Chen nodded thoughtfully. Yes, some species do choose violence over reason. We've encountered many such civilizations over the millennia. The question is, what's the best way to deal with them? New images appeared on the displays, showing worlds that had been transformed from wastelands into gardens. Species that had once been enemies working together on projects that spanned star systems. We find that most aggression comes from fear, Chen explained. Fear of scarcity, fear of being destroyed by others, fear of being seen as weak. Remove the fear, provide security and abundance, and even the most warlike species often choose peace. Admiral Vextor studied the images with the eye of a professional soldier. This level of technology, you could conquer the entire galaxy in days. Why don't you? Because conquest achieves nothing permanent, Chen replied. We learned this lesson long ago. You can force obedience, but you cannot force growth. You can demand submission, but you cannot demand wisdom. Around them, the demonstration of power continued. Hegemony ships found their weapon systems had been converted into advanced manufacturing devices. Communication arrays were now broadcasting music instead of military commands. Even the artificial gravity had been adjusted to make everyone feel lighter, as if the universe itself was trying to lift their spirits. The choice is yours. Fleet Commander, Chen said, her image beginning to fade. But choose quickly. My colleagues grow impatient with species that value pride over survival. Zarthek looked around his bridge at officers whose loyalty had never wavered, now staring at displays that showed their entire understanding of the universe had been wrong. The greatest military force in known space hung helpless, surrounded by beings who treated interstellar war like a minor behavioral problem to be corrected. He thought of the hegemony homeworld, with its billions of citizens who believed in the righteousness of their empire, He thought of the conquered species who served them, some willingly and others through fear. He thought of the vast military machine that had taken centuries to build and could be dismantled in an afternoon by forces he couldn't even properly comprehend. "We will return to the hegemony," he said finally, the words tasting like defeat and possibility combined. "We will deliver your message." "Excellent," Chen replied, her smile carrying genuine warmth for the first time. "Your faster-than-light drives will engage in 10 minutes. We've taken the liberty of programming a direct course home and including some additional information in your navigation computers." As her image faded, space around the fleet began to return to something resembling normal. The impossible ships withdrew to distances that made more sense. The reality-bending effects slowly diminished, but the memory of what they had witnessed would remain forever. The third battle group departed Earth's system, carrying a message that would change the galaxy. Not the message of conquest they had planned to broadcast, but something far more revolutionary: the news that there were alternatives to endless war. Behind them, Earth resumed its